This is John Black, super chemist. We're here to make some potassium dichromate. We're going to start off here with 44 grams of sodium hydroxide. I'm going to put in this 1,000 milliliter round bottom flask. And then to that, I will add 50 milliliters of water. That should heat it up. And after it dissolves, I'm going to add in 42 grams of chromium hydroxide. I'm going to take about 10 minutes, add a little bit at a time so it doesn't clump up at the bottom. Keep it stirring. Once I get it in there, I'm going to make sure that I heat it up to about 80 degrees Celsius. Now I'll keep it between 60 and 80 degrees Celsius while I add some hydrogen peroxide. I'm going to put in about 64 milliliters. And this is my apparatus because hydrogen peroxide actually has some additives in it, and it stinks when you beat it up. So I don't even have the condenser hooked up. It's just basically to keep the fumes in check. I can add it to the top there where the thermometer would normally go. It's crucial that you have a lot of strong stirring during the addition of this hydrogen peroxide. It took me an hour to add in the 64 milliliters, and that's about 20% concentrated, I'm guessing. I added it in, see how it turns yellow and bubbles on top? I won't add no more in until I see that dissipate and it go back to the green color. Now I'll add some more, just a little bit though. Now you do not want to add a lot of this, that is for sure at one time. First of all, it will not react. You'll just waste your hydrogen peroxide. And number two is overfoam. You do not want overfoam. I just wanted to show what happens when you put too much hydrogen peroxide in or too fast. Can overflow or overfoam. And as you can see, I've added this a long time ago here, like a minute ago. It's taken a long time for the foam to get up. I'm not adding no more, but it just keeps coming and keep coming. And if you look to the right there of the round bottom flask, you'll see where my tubing goes into the receiving flask, and it has a tube within a tube. So you'll see that tube inside that tube turn yellow because all the overfoam, and it happens. And here's another example. Sometimes it happens fast, sometimes it happens slow.
Don't you do it, don't you do it, don't you do it! No! No!
Each time I add it, it gets yellower and yellower. As you can see, I'm only about halfway through addition, but it's starting to get yellow on the top, and then your precip is on the bottom there. You want to keep heating this up, keep adding it. So you can see I still have about 40 milliliters to go. But I just keep adding it, and as you can see, you'll get more and more of the yellow up on top and less of the bottom. But once you get it where it's no blue, see how it's all just tan, khaki, brown, green precip, then you know at least turned all the chromium hydroxide into the salt. You'll never get all of it out. I actually added another 40 milliliters to this, and it took another hour where I kept it between 60 and 80, and I kept putting it in little at a time, and then I boiled it down a little bit. It's crucial to boil down the chromate so that it's saturated and concentrated for two reasons. One, so you don't have to use as much acid in the next step, and two, to decompose any excess hydrogen peroxide, or it'll just screw up the next reaction. And I added another 20 milliliters of hydrogen peroxide right before I boiled it. I boiled it down, got it nice and concentrated. You can see the precip there. You'll never get all of it out. There's a small, that dark layer. That's what you want it to look like. You want nice, clear, yellow sodium chromate, and obviously you have some sodium hydroxide in there. Now you can see chromium hydroxide is like a blue, green. You can see inside there sodium chromium hexahydroxide coordination complex salts is green brown, totally different colors, so you know something changed there. It's definitely not chromate, and you can see it just covers the it's just a film, otherwise that stir bar would have been buried, but it's just sitting on top of it. There's what I got. Well, I'm going to add 75 milliliters of concentrated hydrochloric acid, just that I got at Lowe's, and that should bring it up to a nice neutral pH. You don't want to add it too fast. It does heat it up, and it does release a lot of HCl gas. You'll see, though, that I add a little bit at a time, and at the top it's real acidic, so it's a lot more red. But when you stir it up and get it all mixed up, it'll disappear and dissipate till you actually get all the acid in there. And you're just basically making your dichromate. I've put in my 75 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. That should neutralize all the hydroxide that's in there, the sodium hydroxide. As you can see, it's neutral. Nice orange color. As you can see, when I did that, I got a precip, a lot of precip. Now that's probably table salt because it's not as soluble as the sodium dichromate or the sodium hydroxide that it used to be. Now this is where I made a big mistake. I should filter this out. It all looks like white salt. I should have filtered it out. I didn't. Big mistake. I definitely have filtered that out and looked to see how white the salt was. It's probably because it looks white as heck. Then add your acid to get the pH down to 1 or 2. Now when you add your extra hydrochloric acid to get the pH from neutral down to 1 or 2, the color will change from this nice orange to a red, like a cherry red. I added in total 40 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. That got it up to a pH of 1 or 2. As you notice, the stuff that pre-sipped out, it's no longer there. I should have filtered that out. Alright, so I concentrated this down. So I got 20 grams of potassium chloride in here. 20 grams of potassium chloride. I boiled it down so it's nice and whatever. I'm going to dump it in here. As you can see, as soon as I add that, I got precip. Alright, I'm going to filter this out. Let it dry out on there for a couple minutes. Now this is 20 grams right here, and I haven't even boiled it, to get it concentrated and do anything. It just pre-sipped out by sitting there, and I did put it in the refrigerator. So probably I did get a gram of sodium chloride that came out with it, but it's already 20 grams right there. Alright, I boiled the water down, concentrated this, let it cool to room temperature, and then I put it in the refrigerator and in the freezer. You can see nice orange crystals. So now I got 43 grams. I got 20 plus 23 is 43. Now this remaining stuff here, I'm gonna boil it down and concentrate it and do this one more time. All right, I just got this out of the freezer. Alright, so I got another 17 grams right here. This was the first batch where this is the most purest. I mean, if you could see the color, this is like all orange. This you could tell is not pure. Total, I have 60 grams. This has got to be recrystallized at least twice. Now keep in mind, even though I got 60 grams of salt, I just took that right off the filter. I didn't dry it out. After I filtered it, I sucked the water off maybe about 30 seconds with the vacuum pump, and that was it. And I weighed it up. So there was at least 10 grams of water on that. So that was a lot of salt. So I mean, really, there was only about 50 grams of salt there. As I put that 60 grams of salt, or 50 grams, whatever you want to call it, into the least amount of water I could get it into. I boiled it and concentrated it, and then this is it right here. I'm letting it cool down to room temperature. As you can see, I have precip coming out. Every once in a while, I'll give this a stir because it starts looking white. I think like as it cools down, the dichromate will precip out, and that leaves more room in the water for stuff to be in there. You know what I mean? So some of the sodium chloride might redissolve as the dichromate comes out. So what I do is I just stir it up a little bit every once in a while and let it settle, and you know what I mean? That should help out a little bit, at least in my mind. Alright, so I just got this out of the freezer. Well, there it is after one recrystallization. I got about 33 grams. This still is not pure. So you figure you recrystallize this again. I don't really like recrystallizing it where you boil it and cool it down like that. I like to do it naturally. I like to let it evaporate naturally, not with heat. The only reason I boiled them down for the crystallization and the first recrystallization was because I put them in a distillation apparatus so that all the fumes were contained with a bubbler, because there's acid and stuff in it. But by the time you get to this point where you're at your second recrystallization, you can do it the slow processed way of evaporation because it won't stink now. So I'm going to take this and a bunch of other stuff that needs recrystallized and put it all together, and then I'll do it all at one time. But I just wanted you to see what the yield was, what it looked like. You can see a little bit of contamination, although I'm sure there's more than I can see. Well, the theoretical yield is 36.75 grams. Now remember, I crystallized 3 batches out that added up to 60 grams. I didn't recrystallize it, I crystallized it. Now most of that, not most of it, but a lot of that was water, probably about 10 grams or so. So let's just say 50 grams. The first recrystallization, I actually had a total of 33 grams. Now the second recrystallization I didn't do. Remember, I'm going to mix that up with some other stuff and do it all at once. But let's say I did recrystallize it, I'd probably lose about 5 grams. So that leaves us with 28 grams. If I divide that, I'll get 0.75 or 75% of yield. So that's not that bad, considering that you have an equilibrium between that and the chromic acid. Anyways, always remember, science is great.